Today, we welcome to the program Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee, representing California's 12th congressional district, also a candidate for the Senate seat currently held by Senator Dianne Feinstein. Congresswoman, really a pleasure having you on. I appreciate your time.
Nice being with you, Dave.
So, just to start with some of the things that are going on right now. Yet again, we find ourselves in this position of talking about the debt ceiling and are we going to default and who's posturing politically and for what different reasons. Just as someone who's been through a number of cycles of this, is this even remotely interesting at this point, or is it just a feeling of exhaustion that this has to happen time and time again?
No, it's not a feeling of exhaustion. I feel like that the Republicans, especially the MAGA Republicans, have politicized this to the point where it's confusing oftentimes to the public. When you incur debts, and remember, a large portion of these debts were incurred under Donald Trump with his tax giveaways to corporations and the mega rich. When you incur your debt, you're obligated to pay it. And when you buy a car, you pay your car note. If you default on your car note, they repossess the car, and then if you go to get another car, the interest rates will go up if, in fact, you can purchase another car. And so why they're politicizing this is primarily to speak to their base and to the MAGA Republicans who want to basically take away and cut Social Security, cut veterans' health, cut Medicare, all of the cuts that they want to take place around using people's lives really as hostage for the debt ceiling. And that's unacceptable. We must pay our bills. Then we talk about how we negotiate around the budget. I'm a member of the Budget Committee and the Appropriations Committee, and that's the process that should be used at this point.
Do you operate in Congress with the belief that something like the debt ceiling debate, which feels so distant to the lives of so many Americans who they go to work, they might bring kids to school, they're living their lives. Do you operate with the belief or assumption that something like the debt ceiling debate can be used both positively and negatively electorally, or that it's the type of thing that just turns people off?
I think people need to understand the dynamics. When you talk about debt ceiling, we have to break it down. And I looked at Kevin McCarthy, the speaker's district. I mean, thousands of people will lose jobs. Thousands of people in his district will lose their veterans benefit. Thousands of people, their retirement savings will be cut by at least $20,000. So thousands of people in his district alone are going to be impacted. When you look at childcare, when you look at early childhood education, when you look at college education, young people need to have college that's debt free. It's going to cost a heck of a lot more for young people to go to college if we defaulted on the debt. So this has real impact on people's lives. And that's why we're fighting so hard as Democrats to get these Republicans to understand we must pay our debts. We didn't have this issue under Donald Trump. I mean, I think we raised the debt ceiling, three times? And that, the Republicans were fine. And so this is a political issue. They're trying to cater to the base, to Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they really don't care about whose lives that they're hurting. But believe you me, Republican lives in Republican districts in red states and blue states, people are going to be hurt in a big way if, in fact, we don't do this.
Congresswoman, with the benefit of hindsight, we're now able to have quite a precise conversation about something like Afghanistan. If we go back to the moment decades ago when you were the only member of Congress to vote against the authorization of military force in Afghanistan after 9/11, and we now go to Joe Biden carrying out some version of the plan Donald Trump wanted to carry out to get us out of Afghanistan, which, while not perfect, I believe was absolutely the right decision. What can we now say in sum total about that now that we have these 2 decades going back to your vote against that authorization all the way through to the exit, although some contractors remain? What's the retrospective on Afghanistan?
Well, first of all, yes, I voted against the authorization because it came 3 days after the horrific attack on our country. First of all, thousands of people were died. Still, thousands of people are dealing with the health impacts of what took place. And it was a 60-word authorization 3 days after this horrific attack, that authorized not only President Bush, but any subsequent president to go to war without coming back to Congress. That's unconstitutional. I mean, we debate and authorize or not the use of force for specific actions, not giving the executive branch, Congress's, which is the people's voice, authority. And there's no way I could vote for that. That was overly broad. It set the stage for perpetual wars. Fast forward to today, we have used this. The administration, all administrations since the Bush administration, has used this in, I think, 19 or 20 countries, non-related to 9/11, 41 times. Even and the Congressional Research Study provided a declassified report. It's been used for domestic surveillance in our own country. And so was overly broad, as I said it was. We needed to debate and come up with an appropriate response. I'm not looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. I mean, I know we have to have some form of a response, but you have to have a rational response that's appropriate, not 3 days after while people are mourning, grieving, and angry. And so now I'm trying to repeal this authorization, and I've got bipartisan support to do that. What the problem and the sticking point is, there's some who want to repeal and replace. Well, what do you replace it with? The president has to come to Congress to have an authorization to replace whatever he needs the authorization to use force for. So my repeal authorization stays in place for 8 months. If the president determines he or she needs an authorization to go to war, come back to Congress, we'll debate it and provide it or not.
What's your view on the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which, it wasn't perfect, but I believe it was the right decision. There were a number of criticisms made of Joe Biden's withdrawal, but when the former president, Donald Trump, was initially asked what he would have done differently, he wasn't really able to articulate anything that he would have done differently. So it seems that maybe there would have been some chaos no matter when it happened. What's your sense of it?
Well, my sense of it is that it had to be done. And yes, it was chaotic. It wasn't planned. But remember, this was set up by Donald Trump.
Yes.
And he made. And so President Biden did the right thing. It could have been done in a more organized fashion where we could have, I think, it could have really provided a better safe passage for those, especially who protected U.S. troops and who supported the U.S. in Afghanistan, the Afghan population. But he had to do this because in most military officials will tell you, we'd be there 20 more years and then 20 more years. There was no military solution in Afghanistan. And so why would we stay there another 20 years? Our young men and women served bravely. We lost a lot of troops. A lot of our young men and women have health impacts that will be with them for the rest of their lives. We have to make sure that they have the type of medical care, employment, and support that they need, which, of course, the Republicans are reticent to give and to support. So, yes, President Biden did the right thing. No, it was done, no, it was not done in an orderly way, but the historical context has to be looked at and what Donald Trump promised and how President Biden had to execute right away. And that was what took place.
Congresswoman, I want to talk a little bit about the Senate race that you're involved in right now. This is a very interesting race. We've interviewed Adam Schiff, your colleague and opponent in that race. We hope to speak to Katie Porter, also your colleague and opponent in that race. I get so many emails about that race. And one of the big concerns that people have is that there are 3 congressional seats here that are going to be vacated, which hopefully would be filled by Democrats, all for 1 Senate seat, which also, if Dianne Feinstein were to resign, at least in the short term, Gavin Newsom would get to appoint someone. Gavin Newsom has said if he had that opportunity, he would appoint a black woman. Adam Schiff, very nice guy, not a black woman. Katie Porter, same thing. So talk to me about the dynamics of this race. Are there discussions within the halls of Congress about the fact that these 3 California House seats will be up for grabs? Talk us through it a little bit.
Well, I'm very focused on my race. First of all, I have a very strong Democratic district, so I'm confident that we will elect a Democrat in the 12th congressional district. And yes, I'm running. I was one of those that the governor had considered once Vice President Kamala Harris resigned. And of course, the governor appointed, who is a good friend and doing a great job, Senator Alex Padilla. But the governor did say, if he had an appointing authority, that he would appoint an African American woman. But let me tell you, I am running. And going back to when he said that, there were two African American women at the top of his list. One was, at least we heard that, was Mayor Karen Bass and myself. But I decided after I talked to Senator Feinstein in December, that she was going to make her announcement very soon, whether she was going to run or not run. And I waited until she made her announcement that she was not going to run. That was in February. Of course, my opponents were running already,
Yes.
but I waited. I filed the next day after she announced she was not running, and I'm running. And I think that my experience, my background, my lived experiences, as well as my experiences as a negotiator and as a progressive Black woman, and as someone who fights not only for marginalized communities, but for everyone, for the middle class, for working families, for people to have the quality of life that they deserve, an economy that works for all, people who are not been seen. You know, here in California, we have 20% of our population is one paycheck away from poverty. No one in the Senate is fighting for the poor and low income people and working families. You don't hear that debate. You don't hear the debate around climate change and addressing the climate crisis with environmental justice as part of that in terms of what we do to mitigate the harm of low-income communities. I am running in this race on a platform to talk about inequality and housing and my shared experiences. I had an abortion when I was 15 and a half years old. I co-chaired the pro-choice caucus. I fought to end the Hyde Amendment. I talked about what happened during my abortion. Not only did I do that, well, I did that because finally, with the Texas decision, I felt like the public should know that there are members of Congress who have these shared experiences, and I am fighting now to make sure that we codify abortion care into law. And so I have many, many experiences as a small business owner, former small business owner, as a person who started a community mental health center. My background is mental health. And my MSW, psychiatric social work, and mental health is a big issue here in California and throughout the country. And so I think my experiences, my ability to negotiate, my standing strong, sometimes having to take on my party when I think they're wrong. And I have courage enough to do that because this is who I am. And of course, there are gaps in the Senate. There are no Black women in the Senate. That perspective, the experience, representation matters, David. Representation matters.
It seems there are basically three storylines that are playing the largest role in what are still the relatively early days of this campaign. One storyline is identity, as you talk about. A third storyline is who is the true or most progressive. And the third storyline is experience versus age and sort of like what the voters are looking for. It seems as though this could get a little bit awkward in the sense that I know you get along well with your colleagues from California. Do you have some conversation where everybody says, hey, let's keep this clean? Or it strikes me as the type of thing that could become awkward.
Well, I don't think it's going to be awkward. I mean, it's a campaign, right? We're
Yes.
all. But believe you me, I know for a fact myself, people don't like campaigns where you're hidden below the belt. And I was always, and I was mentored by Congresswoman Ron Dellums. I worked for Ron for 11 years. He was first Black chair of the Armed Services Committee. And Ron always told me, and everyone on his staff, you debate the policy, you debate experiences, you debate what your historical context and how you're going to use that for the future to make lives better. You don't hit below the belt. You don't go personal. You don't. So no, I don't do that. I mean, I'm going to defend myself. Yes, if there are lies told about me. I mean, come on. But I don't think it's an awkward campaign. This is a democracy. People put out their record, who they are, what they stand for, what they've done and what they're going to do in the future. And then people vote based on who they think will best represent them.
Well, I'll tell you, a campaign based on policy sounds so refreshing given the context in which the Republican Party has abandoned even pretending to talk about policy. So that, I think, would be welcomed by many, many voters. We wish you the best in the campaign. We've been speaking with Congresswoman Barbara Lee, representing California's 12th Congressional District. I really appreciate your time and insights today.
Thank you, David. Nice being with you.